buy houses, whether kind of like you said, like multiple people getting together and buying a house and using it as an investment property. I've helped people buy duplexes, Airbnbs, a lot of different scenarios. Today's like presentation is really going to be about just the foundation of buying a house, like the process of it. So if you feel like after this you have more specific in-depth questions about different scenarios, please let me know, and I'm happy to like cover them the best that I can. But this is really just to kind of get our feet wet and what it looks like to buy a house, because there's a lot of different terms that you probably hear people talk about in the process of buying a home, and we forget as realtors that like y'all don't know what that means. And so my goal is to break that down for you guys. I think we've kind of talked about like you, but like I've been in real estate 5 years, UT grad. I'm at Compass now with the Stephen Nern group. We do probably about 300 million a year in real estate production, and so I've seen it all. There's really not a scenario that I'm familiar with, so I would like to be a good resource if you guys do have questions. Okay, so we have the home buying process. I kind of like to start, you can go down even a little bit. Okay, there. So you can even scroll down a little bit, like to the first. And then we'll just kind of get over it. So the first step in like buying a house is like the pre-approval process. Typically, I don't like to take people to go look at houses unless they know what they can afford, because people will go and look at like an $800,000 house and they're like, I love this. This is the house. And then we go and we talk to a lender and we find out they only pre-approved for like 500K. And it's a really hard conversation to like then tell people that like, hey, this may not be actually what's like in your best interest to buy. And so the pre-approval process means like meeting with the lender. Before I ever like encourage people to look at that step though, like we sit down, we talk about like their finances, their goals, and then like we can connect you with the lender so that you can like pull credit and see kind of like what you qualify for. But there's no this and that until we kind of know what your goals are. And then we'll sit down with me or whoever you choose to use as agent. Again, this is like a very no pressure scenario. So if you have a friend or you have somebody instead who you'd like to use, we kind of sit down at that point though and go over like we know what your budget is at that point, and then we go over all of the areas in Austin that could potentially be a good fit. A lot of the people here seem like investing in real estate is a really big for them, which I like highly encourage. And so during that time, we kind of go over maybe like the up and coming areas of Austin and like maybe where I would encourage you to put your money, especially if you don't see this being like your forever home. If you're like, I'm going to be here 2 to 5 years, max, maybe even less than that, we're going to start talking about, okay, where are those areas going to be and what's going to, where is like Austin's population moving to a more affordable area.
Does that exist?
I will say it does. I found some really good areas for people, and we always, sometimes people do really scary numbers, or they get on Zillow and they start looking at things and they're like, everything I love is like 600 and I don't want to spend 600. They're like, I want to spend 450. So we start talking about what that looks like, those areas, and kind of like get on the same wavelength. A lot of my clients do buy property off market. So I'm part of a few different resources where like we kind of find some things before they ever go to MLS, or you would ever even see them on Zillow. And so I kind of like help people through that process as well if they're looking for a diamond in the rough. But then like once I feel like you and your agent are like on the same wavelength about what you're looking for and what your goals are, then I'm like, okay, let's set you up on a search at that point, and then we can start looking at homes. There's a kind of a lot that goes into that before we that process. I think that one thing now, like yeah, scroll down a bit. So like we have like make an offer, offer accepted, inspection period, appraisal, title commitment, lender documents, closing day. this slide is really just like a brief overview of what it would look like.
Hey, Rachel, is there going to be a part where you talk about inspections?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
So this is just like a brief overview of like all the steps you would go through to buy a house. But I'll get into like a little bit more details like later. Let's talk a little bit about preparing your finances. Something that's like important too is like, I know we all kind of look at our statement, you know, like what, and get a brief overview of what our credit score is. There's like, that's a huge role in like what you're gonna like qualify for and your debt to income when it comes to like meeting with a lender. And so I just tell people like, do not put it, it's like, stay up to date on things, because like those late payments definitely show for like years on things. So when you go to apply for some discrepancies, but there's a lot of ways to work around that as well. If that's the thing that's going on.
Hey, Rachel, could you talk a little bit about the difference between like the credit score that we see? Like I have a bunch of credit cards that give me my credit score,
Yeah.
but there's like a different score that lenders actually look at, right?
Yeah.
Like a more serious score.
Right? They look like, I'm not a mortgage lender, so I can't tell you all the background on that, but I will say they definitely look at your like three main stores, like your TransUnion. Like they look into like a lot of details. It's not just like your one score from your bank account you submit to them and then they're like, okay, well, this is what your paper done. They look at like all of your history, all of your bank statements, your old tax returns, a lot of different things to like qualify you. So it's not just your one score. I think there's a lot of things that go into it. Would you feel like that? Maybe help you answer the question?
Yeah, definitely.
And then let's go down a little bit. We'll get pre-approved. We can get down a little bit more. Okay, then once I feel like, once you're like on the same page, we get to the making an offer portion, and I feel like in today's market, like this is what's always changing. This is like what, when the real estate market changes, the things you need to have a winning offer is what's constantly fluctuating for us. And so I think this is like one of the biggest things, biggest topics for us to talk about, as this is always shifting. I kind of like to ask you guys, like, what questions do you have about like, once you're pre-approved and people are looking and you're looking for a home, what is this like scariest part for you? Like, is that the part where you're like nervous, or like where you feel like you have the most questions?
Trusting the inspection.
Say the same thing, like what condition the house in, like, you know, you get this house and all of a sudden it needs a new roof and a new HVAC system and plumbing crap, like what, you know, like,
Absolutely.
you know, it's really, and that was inspection, like, you're getting a good inspection, like, you don't want a bunch of costs.
Yeah, and I think these are like super good questions, because like in the process of like writing and offer and buying a house that you actually want to submit on, one of the things in the offer is your option period. So that's like, in a really hot market, we typically negotiate 5 days for a fee, anywhere from $500 to $1,000. This is 5 days where you can get your inspections done. If you feel like you need a foundation specialist, septic person, somebody to come out and like dot all the I's and cross all the T's. At that point, we'll be able to like then go back to the negotiating table. So say we find out it has a bunk roof, or like the HVAC, the shot, and it maybe has 6 months left. We can go back and like ask the seller, hey, will you either kick us back that money to go ahead and replace it after closing, or will you replace those things now? And then if we're like in a little bit of a slower market, we can do a longer option period, it can be 7 to 10 days. I'm currently in a deal right now where we've extended the option because it looks like there's a few more things that we need to go ahead and get checked by very like specialized professionals. So during your option period, you will be able to make that decision. And if you decide this housing is too dear because I don't want to move forward with it, you can terminate the contract during that time, and you would only lose your option money. So it just kind of depends what you feel like is going on.
Yeah, she knows specialists.
Yes.
Are the good inspectors from the
Yes.
county.
So I would,
She tells you who to.
yes, so I'm not just like letting people go out there and like find these people by themselves, like, I'm going to schedule the inspection for you. If, and we go over the report in detail together at the house with the inspector, if we start to notice some things like the roof is on the outside, you're like HVAC, or like, sometimes in a lot of older homes, you'll see like cast iron piping, like, those things that I feel like we really need a specialist, then I have a huge vendor list of people that will go through and get those scheduled for you and just make sure that everything like looks really good. But during the process of buying a home, you should never be there to like pull your hand and provide resources for you. It's very important.
Just a question from someone online. Is there any recourse if an inspection doesn't uncover a major issue?
Any recourse?
Yeah,
If it doesn't uncover,
if it doesn't uncover a major issue, so you find out later,
So-
yeah.
I will tell you no.
Yeah, I was gonna say no.
Situation, so,
No.
yes, the realtor can tell you this inspection company, but sometimes the inspector will miss things, because if you get in a home that maybe certain things aren't turned on, and the
Or
inspection,
not ready.
right, it could be anywhere from $300 to $400 inspection, and that doesn't go towards buying a home, that's a separate
Yeah.
cost. And let's say you close on the house and now you have 3 gas leaks. That's what happened to me.
Oh, what's up?
And it had to be fixed. And the inspector missed it and everything, and there is no recourse. Once
Yeah.
you sign it, they give you the keys, you're done. Unless you like try to sue the inspector or whomever.
No.
But, and then that's here in Boston. This just happened to me.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm just saying, in my experience, there is no.
Our roof leaks in like 4 different spaces, all inspectors.
Yeah, and there's no course like, there's no like recourse on it, but I think one thing that's like super valid and important is there's a lot of inspection companies in Austin.
Sure.
Making sure that like your agent provides you with multiple resources. So like, I don't just refer one inspection company. If I feel like the home's older, like I had somebody who I'm like, this guy used to build homes for a living, like he knows every little thing to look for. So we'll use that versus maybe somebody who specializes in new construction inspections. There's a lot of different things that go into it. And I do encourage people, like, especially if there's cast iron, especially if the roof is 8 or 10 years old, like, I really think like getting specialists out there to look at things will be your biggest like key to prevent those things from happening in the future where you're like, okay, I've closed down my home and like crap, now X, Y, and Z is happening. I think like doing our due diligence during the option period is super important. And there's no shame in asking for more time during an option if you feel like you need to check your boxes to feel comfortable to move forward.
Remember when I was looking at houses in 2020 and inspections were just being waived because there was so much competition that they were like, oh, we
Yeah.
don't even need to inspect, we'll just buy. That's still kind of.
No. And I would never encourage that. I would say leave the house. We're not writing an offer if what it takes to win is for you to waive your inspection. This is one of the biggest purchases that you're ever gonna make, and so no, there's no waiving inspections. Right now, we're in a pretty good place in the market where buyers have the opportunity to ask for concessions, to ask for things. That is slowly dwindling away, though. The market is heating up as like interest rates have come down a little bit, but at no point would I ever encourage a waived inspection. I don't know how people sleep at
I
night.
agree. Like I said, even having the inspection, things can come up that
Yeah,
weren't on the report, so you waiving it and your chance of something going south is
that's
really
just like
great.
going into it
Yeah.
blind, and
Yeah.
something I do encourage to, even after you purchase a home, every like 2 to 3 years, it's really good to just go ahead and get an inspection, because there's things happening inside the house that, you know, you're not always looking under the cabinets, especially if beauty products in there, or like you're not getting on your roof every day, like you're not like looking at all the things like in your air ducts. And so I think like every couple of years, just to stay like up to date with what's going on in your home, you should get it right inspected and keep up first. So that way, like in the future, again, this is an investment. When you go to sell, somebody isn't coming to nickel and dime you on the things that it needs repaired because you're aware and you stayed on top of it. Is there any other questions from people on that one?
I just one more really quick one on the inspection.
Of
Can
course.
you pay for like a super tricked out inspection? That takes like, it's like more expensive and
Yeah.
it takes longer.
Yeah, so like I would say that some of my clients are nervous Nellies, and that's okay. In that scenario, like from the very get-go, I'm like, we're booking your overall inspection, we're booking your termite, we're booking sprinklers, we're booking like your foundation, your roof, your air ducts, like, we're gonna go ahead and just do it all. You may end up spending more like $1,000 there, and again, that doesn't go towards your closing costs, but it goes towards your peace of mind. You know that every little I and T is dotted, and there's everything being considered. Again, I wish I had a crystal ball sometimes, like I'm representing people to be like, 5 years from now, like, there's gonna be a leak or there's gonna be something, but like homes age, things happen. That's why we have home insurance. We hope that those things cover.
We talk a little bit about the healthy items deposits and what sort of range.
Yeah, yeah, the earnest money is kind of like what I would like to call our like good faith money. So that does go towards your closing costs or your down payment, whatever you make it. But an earnest money is basically a separate fee from the option to say that, okay, let's say we're a week out from closing and you get told that you're like, I no longer want this house. That is money in which you can lose if you did terminate at that time. Right now, in this market, I encourage about like 1% of the purchase price as your earnest money. But again, if there's some things that I'm like, ooh, this isn't looking so good, or maybe like we do have an opportunity to like get more concessions and stuff from the sellers, I would encourage a little less, maybe like 2K, like $2,000 instead of like 3,500 on like a $350,000 house. But that does go towards your closing costs and stuff. What other questions do you have?
Do you, so sometimes they offer one of those, home warranties.
Yeah.
What do you think about those?
I think if we can, like right now in this type of market, we can negotiate a home warranty. In the past, when people were waiting inspections, things like that, there was no chance we would get it, but I encourage it if we can get away with it, you know what I mean? Typically, it's about $500 to like $750 to get a 1-year home warranty, and that typically covers every little thing, even your appliances. And that is kind of something you could see, like if you bought a new build, like every little thing would be more like warranted. That's kind of something we could get covered if we wanted to negotiate that. And right now in this market is something I would encourage.
Yeah, just to comment on that, like we had a home warranty
Yeah.
and we used it twice for our HVAC and it saved us a lot of money.
Yeah.
So I was in the seller paid for it.
Yeah, it's really great. So yeah,
So
it's
nice to have, for sure.
yeah, and even if like we're in a market where I feel like the sell, like it is something that's great that we can negotiate with the seller and have them pay for, even if we feel like though we're not in a market where they'll cover it, I still encourage it like moving forward as a good experience. It's not something that people typically regret buying. And sometimes I'll talk to clients like, for a closing gift or something, I'm like, do you want a bottle of wine or do you want a home warranty? Like, you know what I mean? Like, you can choose wine, but when people talk about it, I think a home warranty is like really,
People in this room, people in this
you know, y'all are and I always tell people, no, the home warranty, but you never know. Let's see. But one thing that I'd really like to talk about real quick too is the seller paying your closing costs. This was something we weren't seeing in 2020. In fact, typically buyers were like paying the seller's closing costs, vice versa. Right now, we can negotiate about 3% of the home's purchase price and closing costs. You can use that to buy down your rates. You get a cheaper monthly payment. You can use that towards the closing costs. You can use that towards the overall price of the home. Like there's so many benefits right now to that. Like, and that's something that I feel like maybe in 6 months to a year, we maybe see dwindle away a little bit as interest rates come down. But at this time, being able to like cover closing costs is something we can negotiate with the seller. Because right now, like your closing costs are typically about 1% of the home. That's something that we get the sellers to pay for, and then you're only bringing your down payment to closing people, and that's a really huge thing. Any questions on that?
Well, just something kind of different a little bit, in maybe it relates, but if you're buying a home for strictly investment versus something that you're gonna live in.
Yeah.
Does any of these products like change, like the mortgage would change right now, I don't know how much you can speak to the mortgage margin and, getting mortgage for an investment home
It depends.
versus.
It depends if you already own a home. So if you're buying a second house, then there's someone usually who puts 15% down on a second home. And then, but I think more common, especially if you want it to be a cash flowing asset, I would encourage 25% from you. Just because here in Texas, our property taxes are pretty high, and so it can be kind of hard to cash flow if you're not putting down. But these steps don't really change, if you're purchasing a home as an investment, they're still gonna be very much the same. Unless you're paying like all cash and we're going to see a bit close. But I don't necessarily encourage just paying full out cash for a house. I think it's good to keep some things liquid because you just never know what's gonna happen. It's a pretty significant amount down. So there's just a few different ways. And again, with the market always changing, some of these things will continue to shift. That's kind of one of the beautiful / things about real estate. It's always gonna look a little bit different how we piece together a deal to make it an offer. Anybody have any questions online? Okay. One thing I'd like to talk about a little bit too is like loan type. I'm not a mortgage lender, but at the end of the day, there are a couple different options you can choose. Like when you're financing a home for the first time, you can do like an FHA loan, which is as low as 3.5% down, or you can do conventional, which is as low as 5% down. For an FHA loan, your credit can be a little bit lower. It can be about 580 to qualify. But with those things, you're still gonna have like a little bit of like mortgage insurance, which is about $75 a month if you're not paying 5% down. But there are some different options, and I've seen lenders get really creative in the last few years too, with like zero down loans. There's a lot of different things out there to like help buyers afford a home and it be more accessible. And so, based on what your needs are, we can always sit down and talk about what is the best option for you. But I do think it's good to know that there are options out there.
The monthly payment then just seems insane. If you put 0% down, I just don't understand what somebody who doesn't have anything to put down on a house before the payment that would come.
It's more, I wouldn't encourage it. It's more something that, say you have like a decent nest egg and you feel like things may be like a little rocky in the future, you want to save some of it to invest in another property in the future or different investments. Then I would say zero down can make a little bit of sense, especially like people who, yes, they qualify to buy the house, they qualify for the monthly payment, but they're like, I'm gonna get a roommate. Like, there's different ways to like alleviate some of that. I guess on the monthly payment right now, but I don't encourage zero down if we're sitting down looking at all their finances. And I'm like, you're gonna be hustler, like nobody wants that. And so yes, there are some zero down options out there, but again, it's not gonna be for everybody. But it could be a good option for someone to utilize depending on what their goals are. Yes.
When you're trying to either choose or like maybe you're actually not choosing what you're eligible for. I think one of the things I always think about is like how in at least the market as it had been, maybe this is old news. How do you compete with people coming in with all cash offers? Like, is it just you need to be prepared to have offers not accepted? Do you need to like, how do you adjust your expectations to compete with people who are coming in with all cash offers?
I don't see as many people coming in with all cash these days. Again, the market continues to see cash being more popular, but I think we need those offers in terms like, sometimes if it's gonna take 30 days to post versus 2 weeks, that's okay if our terms for the loan are better. Like just because somebody only has cash and they're like, I'm not for 425, you could offer 435 in finance, you know, maybe it's only gonna be about $20 higher for how much certificate and what it would have been. And then there's also, again, people have gotten really creative on the loan side of things, and so in 2020, a lot of my lenders were offering a program where we could make a cash offer. It was gonna be about like a 1% fee to do it, but we could offer all cash, and then it would like transition, and they would close separately with the lending company, and it would be just your traditional loan for that. So, we do have some things in our pockets to like help people compete, and it goes just as quick as something with cash. I know it's really crazy, especially for people who really bought a house in like a really long time. There's like really wild options out there. But no, I've been able to get really creative with people to make sure that like our offer comes out on top. Again, without sacrificing the well-being of the person.
And someone was asking if we could circle back on, could you explain more about why you shouldn't pay cash for a home?
So I don't encourage full cash for a home because it's a lot of money. Again, if you're a billionaire, sure, go pay cash for your house, live your best life. I'm happy for you. But I typically like would encourage more like 50% down, just because say somebody liquid has 700K and they're looking at like a $400,000 home, they can afford the monthly payment, you know, and I would rather see them keep a little bit more money liquid and invest it in stocks and things like that, because it's all about diversifying your money. And so taking and putting it all in real estate sometimes isn't the best option. Go ahead and put that money elsewhere, especially if you feel comfortable in your monthly payment. I think your money can work for you in different ways. And so that's why at this time I don't encourage people just. Plus, if you're making a mortgage payment on time, it's good for your credit. And so without that, like if you pay all cash, you don't have that one little benefit as well.
Yeah, so I kind of came to make myself feel better about not buying a house. But, you know, if you've got a down payment and that's all your money based on logic, that logic, you don't want to put all your money into a house, whether you've got a down payment or you've got $700,000.
So if you're renting though, you're paying 100% interest. That's money you're never going to see again. So I tell people if like you don't own at least like one property, it is smart if you have the opportunity of a down payment to get yourself into a home, because in the future, say even 2 years from now, you decide to sell it, you can at least get the money out that you put into it and then some. Right now, the market appreciates about 6% a year here. We've even some economic forecasts have even said that this year we'll see 15% growth. So again, if you're spending $2,500, maybe less, maybe $1,650 a month in rent, but you don't have something you own, that's money you're never going to see again. So and then even in the future, like you own something, you're moving away, you're going to be able to lease it. That's somebody else paying your mortgage 10 years from now. You decide to sell it, you get to take that money back. You know what I mean? So I do look at it as a good investment. And again, it's about diversifying your money. And so owning at least one house for yourself can go really far for you, especially in your retirement goals.
There's so many fees though associated with buying a house that it takes more than 2 years to kind of recoup them. I think that
It depends.
I
Like,
think that you want to be in a house for like at least 5 years.
And occasionally the market does go down.
yeah, sometimes it goes a little bit down, and we prepare for things like that. And in comps, we look at like what that home could rent for. One thing that we haven't seen ever really happen in a long time is rent go down. Every year rent gets more and more expensive, and so we do factor that into like, okay, so maybe you don't want to live here in 3 years, maybe, and then you want to like rent it out. We look at those comps for you before you decide to buy a house. You know what I mean? So, but yes, we always have to prepare that like it can go down a little bit. But real estate has been something that's been very consistent in the past as far as like long-term growth. And so it is more of a buy and hold thing. If somebody really thinking is, I'm gonna live here for a year, I feel like this is not a house. Let's make it different. But yeah,
So, but if you spend all of your money on down payment, you don't have anything prepared, that's not a problem.
And that's not, that at that point, I would be like, maybe don't buy a house right now. I would
Right.
say, let's look at, again, finances, goals. If you feel like, okay, I have X amount of money to spend on a house and to put down, we can look at different down payment options, you know what I mean? And maybe it comes to a point where you're not putting everything that you have liquid into this house and you're leaving yourself some money. Or if it feels like, okay, that doesn't work out and your monthly payment's too high, then we can talk about maybe more of like a timeline if owning a house is a goal, you know what I mean? So that you're not left with zero at the end after we've closed.
So a good basis for buying a house is have a good down payment, have some money saved up here. So you're like, you've got the, the ratio of 700 to 300, or, on a smaller scale, maybe that's 70 to 30,000. I don't know.
Yeah,
There's
like,
like 30,000 to buy a house, maybe.
yeah, that's fine, that's okay. Yeah, and again, that's something you'd like to discuss, because you can put like anywhere as low as like 3.5% down. But we need to look at like what that puts your monthly payment at. Again, I don't encourage people to buy a home if their mortgage is gonna be more than like 36% of their like income. Because again, I want people to have money to live life, to make repairs, to like do things. Again, this is something that's supposed to work for you, not hurt you. And so I think it's like looking at the bigger picture. If you sit down with somebody and they're like, okay, I have 30K to buy a house, I would have to wipe all of this out. Well, we would talk about what does that look like 6 months from now? What if you have 45K and now you have a little bit of a nest egg and you have things going on? Then that might be a better time to have that conversation. But again, I always am gonna root for like, okay, what can we do to like help you get closer to your goals? And sometimes for people that doesn't look like buying a house, and that's okay. But if it does, then we start to like work out how that would help them.
So there's like what you were saying, there's a lot of online calculators that you can type in a 400,000 house. What will my property tax be in Austin? There's also PMI, property insurance. You don't have enough equity in house that you can pay each separate. And then property insurance, right? Because that has to be insured. And it breaks it down so that way you know, okay, at 40K, what is that gonna look like and how much will I have left? Because there are fees when your mortgage goes, and it's not just the house, there's other things aside from repairs.
Yeah.
Something to consider.
No, absolutely. And I think too, like, it's always good to like consult somebody, because like in Austin, there's different pockets of different like property tax rates. Like if you're like, I have a neighborhood in mind that I want to live, like talking to somebody who is a professional in that area where like, okay, the homes are gonna cost $450, this is what the property tax is. We can do our best to get you a more accurate like monthly payment and decide if that's gonna work best for you. I think that's super true, that it is a varying factor, and there are some good like resources out there that can like calculate things for you if you're just wanting to like before have a conversation with anybody, play around. So yeah.
I like the story, it's been online, this 26-year-old who bought a house, and she built a tiny house for herself with like 30,000, she's renting out.
The
For me,
thing
Another
is,
house, she's making good money.
I've had,
Like, that's the only way I wanna buy a house. It's possible.
yeah, I've had people convert their garage to a studio, add a separate entrance, and they're living basically in a studio and they rent out the rest of the house. They have two separate entrances completely. And that's something we'll continue to talk about like in A-Wire, is like in future meetings, like how to invest in real estate, different like, and being a resource, like different contractors, different options. Like it'll really be a place where people can come in, like get the nitty gritty maybe of different options out there, but there really are so many ways to make a house work for you. And people forget about that because we drive through these neighborhoods and it's all just like one house after another. I have people who bought duplexes and they live in one side and then they rent the other, and it works out really, really nicely for them. So there's a lot of good options out there. We can talk about appraisal just for like a second. One thing that you brought up that was really good earlier was that people were like waiving inspections and they were waiving their appraisals as well. So basically, when the market was really crazy, people would do an appraisal waiver, which meant no matter what the home appraises for, they will make up the gap. Don't do that, please, I'm begging you, no, it's not smart. I'm really thankful that at this time in the market, most of my people are walking into equity, so we're getting about 30-40K under ask, and they are walking in with maybe 65K in equity, so we're never waiving the appraisal, but if it comes down to the time where we're starting to see multiple offers and stuff like that again, that's why we run the comps, so that we can see what the home will probably appraise for and make sure that you're not gonna be in a situation where you're making up the difference. But again, without an appraisal waiver, it's up to the seller to come back and meet us where the home appraises. So that's something I really want to make sure that's like covered. We're not doing that anymore. Don't ever do that, please, beg you. There's a process and order of operations for a reason. So let's, like, people go out of it to like win offers. We're not gonna do that. Okay, so this was kind of like a little bit what we were talking about earlier, but like after we submit an offer, let's go down a little bit. There's multiple different things that can happen. The seller can just accept the offer as is. They can decline your offer, tell you to go to rocks basically, or they can counter the offer, which is what I see happen 9 times out of 10. We'll find a good happy medium. So I'm always like, let's have a little bit than maybe what you would even think we would, because they're gonna counter us most likely, and we're gonna find a place that works for everybody. I will say, like, it's been very, very rare that like people just decline your offer and tell you to piss off, basically. A lot of times that has more to do with people's ego than it does anything else. But no, there's multiple different times to like negotiate, and that's what really happens most of the time. We can accept the seller's counter offer. We can just because the seller counters too doesn't mean that they accept the counter. You can say, never mind, I don't want this offer to keep living. You know what I mean? So that's always something that can happen. And even during like the option period, like, so once our offer is accepted, and we're in our option period, there can be a time to where we negotiate at that point, like the HVAC comes back, the roof comes back, some kind of leak is happening. We can always come back and say, hey, will you give us $7,500 towards our closing costs? That way post-closing we can fix it, or give them the opportunity to make these repairs and provide receipts and things that they've had this whole time. It's super important. But there's still time to negotiate even post offer acceptance, which I think is important. Inspection period. So this is some of the things that like we do, like if you're like, can we just like get the absolute best inspection out there, kind of like, and just get things from the very beginning. We can do like septic testing, water testing, mold, water pressure, roof, termite, radon, like I mean the whole home inspection. I don't encourage people to spend money like this if we're buying a brand new house. Like it was literally just built and there's a lot of warranties in place. But if we're buying a house that was built in the 60s and it has one owner and they, you know, they've maintained the house properly, we're gonna go ahead and do all of this. We're gonna make sure that everything's really good, so that way hopefully people don't run into a thing where they closed and they're running into a lot of issues. And that's one thing that's really great right now about today's market is we have a little bit of time to do this and get this stuff done versus like when it's really, really hot and people were just like 3 days for an inspection. That was hard to do all of this. But no, we would get all of this done in today's market.
Out of curiosity, doing the whole hog, how does that roughly cost?
I would say about $1,000 to do everything, and it takes a couple of days to get all of it done.
Rachel, for those of us who are here, probably kind of type A folks in the first place. So, a 5-day window gives me serious anxiety to get all of that done. Is that something that as a buyer, you can like do your diligence beforehand and have your team ready to inspect?
Yeah, so we typically have like all the hands on deck kind of ready. They know we're making offers and are prepared for something to be accepted. Again, though, like that's something that can be negotiated later on. So say if we really, really want to win, so we do like a 5-day option, we can always extend option period as well. If it's looking like we're gonna need a few extra days to get some of this.
Can the seller say no to that?
They can, but most of the time, it doesn't hurt them to continue to let us do it because.
And you give them money to do that, right?
Yes,
To
we
extend that.
have, we don't always have to give them more money to extend option, but like we do pay your option period so that you have the opportunity to do this. I've never had a seller tell me, no, you guys can't do it because they'd rather us do a little extra due diligence than just back
But
out
they've
the
already got
offer.
like on the hook, right?
Yeah, because
Okay.
we've got them on the hook a little bit and like, they don't wanna just like us terminate and then go back on the market because it shows back on market, which buyers are smart and they're like, okay, something's wrong with that. So they're gonna give us like a few extra days to go ahead and do our due diligence, make sure everything's good.
Does the seller get a whole inspection on board to be able to see it all?
No, they don't, only the buyer sees it, and that's something that kind of like, we keep our cards pretty close to us in negotiations, to say like, okay, X, Y, and Z is going on. There's a really great resource I like to use called Property Doctors. I will send them the inspection report and their general contractors, they'll go through the whole report and break down the cost of everything and what that would cost to get every little nitty gritty thing repaired. Then I can take that and send it to the sellers and be like, okay, it's gonna cost us X now, give us, like, we want this money, or fix these things. So there's some ways we can make strong arm seller. I don't like to do it, but we can and I will. So yes. I've sent people the entire inspection report to get our way. They don't like it because then if we back out of the contract, they have to go through and redo their seller's disclosure and disclose every little thing we found. I don't like to do that to people. If there's some things that we need fixed and they're like. telling
Like
us to go
everything would need fixed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they're telling us to go through the process, all right, well. Here's the dirt and you're gonna have to dispose of and good luck finding somebody who doesn't. have this fixed. So
How kind of mold test can you do?
they vary a lot because mold can be very like specific to an area or it can be everywhere. So it depends what we're getting mold testing on. Are we getting it done in air ducts? Do we see some shower mold? What's going on? So I don't feel super comfortable saying like what that could cost because it's so dependent on what we're trying to find.
I know I've lived with apartments, condos, with all the water pipes breaking, even in new ones. And it's like, it's
Yeah. I would say I just had somebody, a client like get all of her ducts looked at. I think it was $1,200. And they did like literally a whole, like a guided video camera tour of her ducts and like showed her the molds. And then they like gave her a note to replace every air duct in the house basically. She did like bio units and they helped replace it. And now she says she's breathing premium air, so I'm very, and she's like, I have the best air in the neighborhood in my house. And it's like, that's absolutely. But again, like, it can be really dependent on where we think we see things. And mold.
you don't even see it. It's in the walls.
Oh, I know, I've had some clients bring these little dishes where they like swap something and then they like put it on the thing, they're like, I'll get back to you in a few days whether or not this house or not, because I need to see this like mold grows on this thing, and I'm like, those are really type A people, and I'm happy to let them do what they would like to do, but if I
I fully agree with that.
Why not? Right?
usually,
I agree.
I will support it. I won't bring the dish, but I will let you sort of that on. Yes, okay.
We have a question from online. Sophie's asking, how often would you say a foundation inspection is needed during a house purchase in the Austin metro area?
How often? I would say 7 out of 10 times we do a more detailed, like in a whole inspection, they do look at your foundation. If it's looking like it's cracking, settling in some areas, then we'll go ahead and get a specialist out. I see more of like east side and like South Austin areas are kind of where foundation tends to be worse than others. A lot of times in today's market, people know that if they have a crappy foundation, they went ahead and paid for it to be fixed, and then it has a lifetime transferable warranty. So if we notice that, that's something that would be like really addressed. But I would say 7 out of 10 times since the east side and kind of like south, like further south, Congress, Minnetonka, those areas are pretty hot zip codes right now. 7 out of 10 times I'm doing a more in-depth inspection. Not right now. Okay. Let's keep going. We talked about appraisal a little bit. We're not waiving appraisals these days. I really wouldn't. Say hypothetically. So say hypothetically that we get under contract and the home appraises, like we're under contract for 475 and the home appraises at like 435. Because we didn't need our appraisal, it's really gonna be the seller's court to come back to us and realize that their home isn't really worth what maybe we offered for it. And a lot of times you can terminate the contract if they're not willing to meet us where we are, and you'll still get your option or earnest money back at that point. So I really rarely have this happen. Maybe one time it came back like 5K lower than what we were under contract for. We were in a multiple offer situation. My clients decided at that point the home was worth more to them than the 5K, so they went ahead and made it up. But in circumstances, the sellers could meet us back down and we would renegotiate what their financing. So I think that's important. And I will send a copy of this to everybody in their email, so like on your own time, if you want to go through all the nitty-gritty, you can. So kind of like once we're through the option period, we can take that a little bit. Once we're through the option period, and we're like, okay, we're gonna move forward with the house. At that point, I might go ahead and schedule the move. Like things end up being pretty seamless because the lender takes over, and it's really just about like looking at the background and make sure you qualify. You've done a pre-approval. There should be no reasons why things come up, why you've done a qualified spending move forward with the house. But things become much more seamless after the option period. People can start scheduling the move, and again, resources for those things. Reputable members who will where you need to go at a reasonable cost. So things like that happen, and it's kind of the fun part. People can start shopping for furniture. They can start like deciding like if they want to hire an interior designer, do like a lot of different things. It's the fun part once we're through there. And you'll have all of this. It's very detailed on like what I encourage people to do and like when I encourage them to schedule things. Okay, closing. So right, like when we get to closing, typically the week before closing, title reaches out again and they like tell you how much you're gonna need to wire at the time, since we're not typically paying all cash. They'll collect your funds, you'll get it scheduled on the books where you're gonna like actually go to the title office, sign all the paperwork, and things are gonna be deeded into your name. At that point, like we're pretty signed to deal delivered, but once at closing, once you've signed all the paperwork and things have been transferred through from the wire to the sellers, they found we call that funded, then you get your keys to the property usually. Documents, there's a lot of documents. That's it. What questions do you guys, it's a lot, it's a lot. What questions do you feel like you have?
I have a question as somebody who like does not really see herself maybe ever being in a position to buy one, but it's just interesting like hearing about there's like online calculators to see, you know, okay, if I have this amount, what will that get me? And I'm wondering if you could share, based on your experience, by the time that folks are in your office saying, hey, we're interested in buying a home, who have they spoken with before they got to you? Like to kind of get to the point of like, really? Nobody. People like who do you wish they would have spoken to?
People like, I think the first thing that like comes to their mind kind of when they're like, I'm gonna buy houses, like realtor, you know what I mean? But lender is typically my like first choice for someone to have spoken to. It's hard because like, it's really weird that I feel like people are like face to face with their lender. Like I feel like lender is something like they do over Zoom, over email, like on the phone. And so people come to me face to face first to be like, realtors are like also people's like therapists. So they're like, here's everything. Like, do you think I can buy a house? And I'm like, I'm not the main person, I don't get to decide, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
With
yeah.
the ball, but, I always am like, yeah, let's just go ahead and meet up, like, people can like, call me, we can go grab a coffee. I like to have a really like informal meeting with people before I even send them to a lender, just to be like, hey, what do you, like, what are you hoping to get out of this, kind of? And then if it's like looking like they should go ahead and just get the process started with a lender, then we'll do it. Then I'll connect them via email. All my lenders are like thankfully in Austin. Once they've filled out all their paperwork, I really do like to go sit down in person and be like, okay, like, here's all the different scenarios. Like if you put X amount down at this property tax, this is where your monthly payment is gonna be. And just kind of like work through things. So that way, like moving forward when we're making offers, we actually know what your monthly payment on those things are gonna look like. And there's really rarely a bunch of questions at that point about what the finance side of things look like for you. But no, people, I would love it if they like talk to their banker or their lender first, but no, people, they come to me and they're like, here's everything that I have, tell me.
How often do you find yourself in a conversation with somebody where they're like, we want to buy a home, and then through, like, over the course of the conversation, you're like, I don't think you can buy one now. Like, how often does that happen? And then
It's
where
really-
do you send them?
It's really rare, that somebody comes to me and I'm like, wow, like, it's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
And it depends what's going on. Like, if they're like, my credit is really bad, like, I need help. I send them to like some credit repair and I'm like, okay, like, let's really start, like, if they're diehard, like, I wanna buy a house, like, I'm like, okay, let's get credit repair involved, let's start seeing what it looks like, let's maybe talk to some financial advisors about like building a plan for you to save efficiently to purchase a home, you know what I mean? But it's really rare that I feel like people come to me and are like just straight up can't buy a house.
Yeah.
We can typically make things work for them.
Interesting, thank you.
I just find that so surprising because this isn't really a question, it's just kind of airing a thought, but like, if we're not supposed to spend over 30-something% of our income on rent, and the average salary in Austin is like 58,000 a year, you know, so and the majority of people these days are single or living alone. And so we're working with like people who have single incomes, who on average make, you know, of course it's all over the place, but like Austin, I think is like in the 60s or something like that.
Yeah, like most people, I feel like commuting and maybe make like 65, like 75 a year.
But like, I make 100, I have $100,000 saved, and I would not, like, in the places that I go and look at that I feel are like comfortably in my budget. I went and looked at a studio near campus that was overlooking a dumpster and a gas station parking lot, and I was like, this is what I can afford. I can afford 350 square foot dumpster parking lot.
I I feel like we should chat because I have people who are making like 85 year and they're like, we're looking at things that are not in the dumpster and things are okay.
My realtor must hate me.
Yeah,
So
so
I was gonna ask if your what you can afford is self-imposed or if it's.
For sure.
I have money, so you're taking like lenders telling you that you're, oh, no, like
I almost spend more than like 1,200 a month on rent.
Oh, that's already, I would say like. That's really hard. I would say like spend 1,200 on it.
I think I'm 50 right now for rent to live in my friend's bedroom, so there's no reason why I would ever leave that, you know, to go pay 2,000 a month for a.
And I can.
That makes sense, but like near campus, you're not gonna be able to have phone for 1,200 a month.
No,
You like.
like,
do
it was what?
you like view it?
Wait a minute.
A condo like over by the domain. It was like listed at 250,000. It was cute. It was remodeled. It was like.
It's good.
But no,
It's like the max my budget, which just sounds funny. It's like, it's cute, and it was like, there needs some work, and I'm like, if I'm gonna throw down my entire life savings on this, like, it's gonna be.
and that's why it's like different goals for everybody. Like it's because to some people they're like I'm okay spending 2K a month, and I have my own place, and I'm dealing with this out in the future, and it's making money, and
Yeah.
there's just different things that are like priorities, and it just depends on like your wish list, like what's like, and things you can't compromise for, you know what I mean? So it just depends.
The math isn't mathing for me. 6 people who make 65 to 75K, I don't understand how they're buying $500,000 houses.
Yeah.
Like, that's like where the price seems to be 500 and above everywhere I look.
It depends where you're looking.
Yeah.
Like there's South Austin, there's homes that are even in the 200, they're fixer uppers, right? So it depends on how much you want to invest in
Yeah.
your own time to fix it
Yeah.
up. There's some that are nice in the 350s. Just depends what part of town and what you're looking to do.
Yeah.
And they say, well, it's like there's.
Yeah.
It's a lot out there, it's just,
Yeah.
really, again, it's so different for everybody, I think everybody has, again, different comfort levels on what they're willing to spend monthly for different things, that's why, like, if somebody's like, I wanna spend $1,200 max, and maybe, but they hear just like, maybe have their own place, and maybe Austin is their forever, and like, I would just rent a cute little studio on South Lamar, and like, all good, but if they're like, what are we gonna do for the next, like, 5 to 7 years, and I want to live alone, and that's worth me spending $2,300, $2,500 a month on something that I like I own this in the future, I can like.
It's a big thing, you have to see it as a big.
Yeah, because they'll take them like that.
Yeah.
Because they look at it.
I have a question. I was really curious about the appraisal thing, because I waived my appraisal. And part of it was, I floated my rate.
You did what?
Floated my rate with the lender, because I was buying in, November.
Last November?
Yeah, this past November.
Okay, so pretty good.
Yeah, so I was just waiting for the rate to just keep doing this. So I floated it as long as I could. And, it took me talking to 2 lenders before I even realized where I was in the process. I didn't know about the loan process, felt very lost, it was very stressful. And like, I didn't even realize that floating the rate was an option.
That's like very unique. That I like really haven't heard much about people floating rate. I know like there's been a lot of rules and regulations against like maybe adjustable rate, like mortgages, things like that. But I really haven't heard of people like floating their rate. Most lenders will lock you into the rate now, but not charge you any negative refinance. In the next 24 months, if rates come down to a more comfortable place. So there's.
Yeah, I wasn't hearing that either.
Really, that's super interesting.
Yeah.
What questions do you have about the appraisal that like
Yes.
since you gave your Christmas?
Well, part of it,
I'm curious.
part of the concern was I was trying to figure out why they wanted me to lock, because I was very sure I didn't want to lock, because this was around the time when they were, we were waiting to hear the decision on how, inflation was going, if rates were gonna be cut. And I was pretty confident that the data was gonna be in favor of rates dropping, it did, so I just watched it drop for the time it's floating. And then I later learned that one of the concerns is that the appraisal takes a while. And there's a minimum amount of time they need to secure financing. And so I was just trying to give myself one day beyond the last limit to let the rate fall as far as possible. So yeah, that's why I gave you results. There's a time component to it, and my realtor and the lender actually automatically, I'm a Rocket mortgage, so they automatically, they automatically like waive the appraisal. We could have, I guess we could have asked for it, but I didn't.
Sometimes it doesn't come back, like sometimes if we're like, we need that, like it's right on target, then like we don't get like a specific document about the appraisal, but like none of my clients have ever waived the appraisal if it's needed for financing. Again, in the back end, for lenders, different things happen, and they have a different process for everybody to get the value and feel what's most comfortable to like loan on the home. But I have really never dealt with somebody saying that they like floated their rate or like
never really came back to like their appraisal. Like they never really knew like what it, around where we were. So that's a very unique situation to me.
Okay.
I'm sorry that I did not have better information on that.
It's a brand for you though, Laura, like if you're describing, like I'm watching to see where the data comes in on inflation, to see if rates are coming down.
But that's my clients, like, again, like you sound very educated about where the market may be with rates. Most of my clients are like, I don't know what today's rate is. Like, if they ask me, I'm like, okay, this is where we're at, and it's gonna fluctuate between these few numbers, you know what I mean? Within like 10%, but we're like, nothing's really gonna be that earth shattering.
There's significant changes in the rate in
November, there was.
November, it was split definitely. I talked to a bunch of people, including Sarah, because the distance, the difference in cost between the 30-year mortgage and the 50-year mortgage was not conforming up. To go 30 years because they had.
Okay.
The distance had shrunk so much. But yeah, I was waiting for the rate to fall like.
Cause they were, I will give it to you, they were falling a significant amount during that time, especially in December.
Yeah.
I think they came down like a full percent in December, and
I couldn't wait that long.
people started acting kind of berserk at the end of December/January, I'll say. We saw some multiple offers because rates were like really falling down, and people were like, what's happening? They've stabilized.
Doing the.
Yeah, so we've stabilized it. We're still, I think we locked kind of in right at that like 1% down, so we're at like 6.25% right now. Again, that varies for everybody based on your credit, things like that.
I guess it's like, I guess 6.5 with no points.
Okay, that seems pretty
Yeah.
on trend for that time period.
I could have, bought under at that time. There were rates in the local per 99 and stuff like that, but.
Yeah.
Cause the thing was, like, at that time of the market, the 2-1 buy down was an
Yes.
option, like that. And the 2-1 buy down, none of the time frame points made any sense.
Yeah,
We find because the rate when you calculate.
yeah,
The break-even point on your loan, like, is it worth it 5 points? Like,
yeah. I know exactly what you're
Yeah,
talking
how
about.
long you have the apps or.
Yeah, it's so dependent to like whether, because a 2-1 buy down is something like you can't buy yourself, the seller has to pay for it, but you could buy points down yourself, but I look at buying points kind of as like prepaid interest a little bit, so it just depends like what, again, like where the numbers fall, what are your long-term goals with this house, like, sometimes people get into something because they're like, I love the elementary school, we're gonna be here for X amount of time, like, let's just go ahead and buy down some points for a little bit just to see a slightly better like monthly payment, but again, it's so hard. It is really expensive, and it's not something that I encourage a lot. Something that's also like, depending on what neighborhood you bought, but I will say like, okay, yeah, I'm pretty, familiar with over there. It's a pretty hot market over there still.
I saw, yeah, it never really went to.
It never really went.
to buyers.
Yeah, because it's not a lot of inventory comes over there. So, but I will say like builders, things like that, they like buy rates down in bulk. So like you may even see some builders at like right now 4.99% interest rate.
Wondering about that. I was talking about that with my parents about how a new build, the rates were, and I didn't understand why the rates were so much lower, but that.
Yeah, because builders have so much capital on their back end that if they buy down the rate in bulk because they have so much inventory, they can lock rates with their personal lenders at a different like price because they're buying so many points because they have that much money and wiggle room to do it. So like right now, some of my clients who don't mind living in East Austin out by airport, like I've even had them lock in rates in the 3s because because builders bought points down such a significant amount out there. Like they're at like 399. So there are deals to be had out there. It's just again very specific with like where people are willing to like live. Since the builders do kind of congregate like out in the burbs, so if somebody's like, I want to live in Crestview, like we're paying that interest rate.
Why do you think the stocks are getting kids?
Raw.
I get shocked about the mortgage.
What?
I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
I just think they're very salesy, and I think they're really turn and burn versus like really taking the time to like explain to the buyer what they're getting themselves into with a mortgage. And I think Rocket Mortgage has like kind of high lending fees on their back end with like closing costs. And there's not a lot they can do with it because they're just like much more corporate, versus like using a local lender. They have a little bit more wiggle room in like the rate that they're giving you. They have more wiggle room, like they have more time to like explain to you like what's going on in like the different products versus just being like, here's what we got, take it or leave it kind of. So I just feel like people, I mean, like I've had people use Rocket Mortgage, and sometimes these big, like some of these big builders use Rocket Mortgage or like Loan Depot and things like that, because like, again, it's a big company and they can go ahead and buy rates down really low with that. I just, for your typical first time home buyer, like I really want them to have a more personalized like experience where they really understand what they're getting themselves into.
I have a question on the foreclosures, but before that, I would say, if you're doing the calculator, shop around different mortgage brokers, go to your own bank, credit union, and see what the fees are, what'll give you your best rate. Because usually the realtor will give you a lender, but it's also good to shop around like you would for a car, for example. My question is, on foreclosures, is there like a resource, or are they kind of mixed in with all the other homes in Austin? How does that work here for foreclosures?
They can be sprinkled around, like, so one thing like realtors use to find homes is the MLS, multiple listing services. That's where everything goes to market. Sometimes they're sprinkled around and they're like, so somebody comes to me and they're like, I'm really looking for a foreclosure, I can find them in there. But then there's also, I think it's like the first or last Saturday of the month, there's like a foreclosure auction where all the homes that are like up for foreclosure like get to go and people can bid on them.
Like on the courthouse.
Yes, literally like home that might be like worth 500, they'll be like 175. Like people, like it's pretty.
It's like sight unseen, right?
Yes,
But you also have to bring cash,
Right,
right?
it's all cash.
Yeah.
it's all cash, so it's really.
Not that I need a watch.
No, I think there is something as well for like things that are being foreclosed on. Like by the bank. I've never attended because nobody has really asked me for it or like wanted, like people, I think who were looking for that kind of specific thing, like they're really in the nitty gritty of it and they know what's going on. So they're like, and they're down to pay cash. So they're like, here's what it is.
I followed those for a while and lots of investors would just go and, snap them up.
It's crazy.
And some of them you could see the inside and some of them you could just go based on the law. You have to pay, you have to be registered in advance, you have to be able to pay cash, so much check pretty good.
Yeah, it can be pretty chaotic, but they are sprinkled in.
And the ones that are sprinkled in there, is there any keyword, does it say foreclosure, for example, on the listing?
I can filter by everything that's being foreclosed on in MLS. So typically somebody, like I would go to the market where they like are auctioning off the foreclosed homes, but if somebody's like typically investor clients who are like, I want a foreclosure, I want the best deal. Because foreclosures can be kind of messy on the inside because people are not happy about the fact that their home is being foreclosed on. I'll filter for the foreclosures, and then they'll get a list every morning if something new hits the market in a foreclose, it's being foreclosed on. Does anybody have any questions or feedback or anything? I know this was a lot of like, maybe felt like an information dump. There was a lot of info.
Do y'all meet every month?
We're working on it. Yeah, so we're gonna meet in March to talk really specific. Yeah, AWIG meets every month, right?
Yeah, so the Austin Investing Group meets every month on a different financial topic. We probably will have like another like general Austin Investing Group meeting on real estate. We typically have like 1 or 2 a year. And then, like we did stock market last month, we're gonna do, now I can't remember what we have on the docket for the rest of the year. But then I think a wire, like as like a subgroup, you guys Are you gonna meet monthly or quarterly?
Once a month, yeah, we're having a panel. We're having a panel next month for, like, Lori's gonna talk more about, because she owns investment properties.
So you need an investment property, you're gonna have a loan officer.
Yeah.
And Rachel will be here. to
Yeah.
talk More about this. So.
Yeah, for people
And
who
then,
like
and then
really,
we'll just find meetings.
yeah, people like, that'll be a really good resource for people who like don't own an investment property yet, but are like ready to buy something.
I'm not ready, but it's like.
Okay, so like whether you're getting ready, it would be really like informational for you to come to. There'll be a lender there for it, investment properties, and I know the contract side of things, so we can talk about that.
And then what are your meetings gonna look like after that?
I think they're gonna be a bit more casual, right, Lori? We're gonna meet like, I think in April, we're gonna meet like at a coffee shop and just kind of chat. Like, it can really be a place where people come to get resources, like, if they own investment properties or they're thinking about investing, like general contractors, maybe some of like vendors that I would share, like an inspection, things like that. Like, people could just come and really chat and like build good relationships with people who are maybe going through something similar that they are, which is investing in real estate.
But I imagine that like side conversations, because was that you that was talking about like a bunch of people getting together and like running an Airbnb, like that idea? Like,
No, that's not like a good.
yeah, or whoever, like whoever mentioned that, oh, like she left. Yeah, I mean, I imagine that as you all are having these meetings,
Yes.
like just like these ideas are gonna come up that, you know, people are gonna
Yeah, and that's
chat about, and which I think is, I mean, that's the best part of the Austin's investing group, right? If someone brings up something completely wild that you've never heard of before. I'm like,
Yeah,
that's really
that's gonna be
interesting.
the goal. And too, we're like starting our Facebook group so people like can join and like ask questions like at any time during the weekend. I'll be in there, one of the admins, so I can answer like pretty specific questions too, or Lori can, or probably like your fellow women who invest in real estate can be there to chime in. But really, I like just hope for this to be a place where people can come and like get information and there's dumb questions. I felt like our first meeting, like how to buy a house was like the very foundation. But again, like since this is a lot of info, like people are gonna forget, the market's gonna change. We hope that people can come in, like even if you still have some of the similar questions to what was covered here, you can come to us.
I have like a philosophical question that I want to ask you guys about real estate. Like in listening, I don't know if this is because this is like a self-selecting group of women that come into this room, right? Like talking about like buying a house, putting a tiny house in the back, living in the tiny house and making money off the big house. Like that seems like 180 from like the American dream story. Like, is there still like an American dream of like the house with the white picket fence, or like for people, and maybe it's like people like younger than I am, right? Or like, is that still an American dream? Like, do you see that as an American dream, or are most people coming into this being like, this is a financial decision?
It's a financial decision, and it's a much more modern. I will say that my people who are like the fire train are like the people who are thinking of it like that, like house hacking and doing crazy things. And I will say, like, I've had a couple girls like come to me from a different women's organization and being like, we're gonna buy a house together. Like, we're just like all gonna combine our incomes, and like, again, they talk to an attorney to write up different ways of like ownership with it, depending on how much money each person put into it. But like, for people who are on more of that like fire movement, or like want to retire earlier, invest, but they don't know what their long-term plans are. They are getting more creative, and it's all about the numbers. It's not necessarily as emotional as the people who come to me and are like, I have 2 kids and like a husband, and like we're having a baby on the way and we're upsizing. So that's more like American dream to be, where they just want your traditional single family.
Yeah, you just want it to look a certain way and like be and you'll pay for like to have it be a certain.
Yeah, versus my clients who are literally like, no, we're gonna put 2 kitchens in this house and we're all gonna live in it, and we're gonna like, and then it'll be an Airbnb, like get really creative with things. So I've seen it a lot of different scenarios in today's world to make it work for people, because again, it's expensive to own a house. I'm not under the impression that it's not, you know what I mean? So people are getting creative, and I love it. It's fun.
Does that like check that like everyone in the room, that it's like more of a like, this is like financial?
It has to be
Yeah.
that, it's just so outrageous.
Yeah, and I think it comes down to lifestyle, right?
Yeah.
Because you want to live in small custom,
Yeah.
you're probably buying that, so then it's a case of well, can I maybe look outside of the states and finance my life here
Yeah.
and still have my money going somewhere?
Yeah, like some of my, like the clients who said they're all gonna buy together, they're gonna buy in like the Holly neighborhood on the east side, and like they had a big backyard and some really cool things, cause they're like, we have dogs and this is what we want, and you know, so it's just, it's really getting crazy, but I know that buying a home is like so specific for everybody and it looks different for everybody, so like if after this meeting you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My information's on this like presentation, it'll be emailed to everybody, so I'm always happy to answer specific questions. Or just sit down for a coffee and like shoot the shit, basically.
I've got another one, sorry. Did you already talk about this when I was in the bathroom with Judy? Did you already tell us what the up and coming neighborhoods are? That you mentioned at the very beginning, like what do you think of the up and coming neighborhoods? Because I had like a similar, like 20 years ago, my husband and I decided we had a certain budget for a house, and we were looking at a condo in South Austin, and then I talked to a real estate agent, and she was like, no, you're not doing that, you're gonna look at this pocket neighborhood, Crestview, and spend 50% more and just take the risk. And that's where I live now, right? So there was kind of all of these components of like, this was my budget, and then I blew it up to take the risk on the better neighborhood. And it worked out. I mean, I still live in Crestview. So thinking about like up and coming neighborhoods, like where you might want to take that risk to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
Taking a mind, like we do in investing, right? Like taking a risk, but where would you take it?
I think it's like more like zip code specific right now, like 78745, which is like just on the other side of the 04. So like, that's fine, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
So I would say like I
I
think there's still a lot of opportunity over here to like buy property and flip it or buy on the lower end. I think.
Well, 10 years ago, this was a shithole, so.
Yeah.
And money.
You know, and then I would say like a little more like northeast of like Mueller, like Windsor Park, like some areas over there.
Lakeway neighborhood.
Lakeway's rich,
I know.
yeah. It's supposed to be like, I would say it's already happened.
Northeast of
Like northeast of Mueller, like there's a neighborhood, Windsor Park and like University Hills over there. I think there's a really good opportunity to like buy an older home over there and like flip it. I see that being a really hot pocket right now too, as far as like lower inventory that people want to go, and I think it'll continue to move that way. There's a neighborhood by the domain called Gracie Woods, and I think it needs a little TLC over there, but because there's so much development happening in that area, I think it'll continue to be a really great place. So, and then like Millwood, things over by Apple Campus, you can still buy like 325 over there, but there's comps in the neighborhood for like 700. So I think there's just some good opportunity to still get in.
So I guess I just want to answer the question about communication gap. So what is the,
Yeah.
list there? Like what is the.
So like of the appraisal gap, what is the risk? Is that what you're asking?
How does the appraisal have helped?
Well, it's hard because like if you didn't get one, then you don't really know what your home is worth. You know what I mean? Again, we consider worth whatever somebody's willing to pay for something, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, like the appraisal is kind of what the bank values the home at and what they're willing to lend on. And so that's where we like struggle with an appraisal gap. For example, like when the market was really hot and people were paying so much more for a home, like the bank, because of the numbers, wasn't like, this is what the home is worth, this is what everybody thinks it's worth, but like logistically, the home is not worth that, you know what I mean? So that's why the appraisal is so important.
Like a lot. I had comps before to my realtor and I did actually for more comps.
Yeah.
So that's the ones that we live in that comps in the area, that's what they said.
They said there were no comps.
There were none comps, that's why they are.
Okay. Okay,
That's
then.
why
Okay, then I wouldn't worry about it too much. Like, for example, like in some of these areas where there's like a lot of inventory and like on a really regular basis, like 10 homes in the neighborhood are turning over, like they're all kind of falling around the same number typically. And so at that point, the bank will often be like, okay, there's enough info. Like, we don't need to send an appraiser out there to like look and walk the property. Like there's enough data to prove that the home is worth what it's worth. So that may be why you didn't receive one.
I feel like in the seventies, the square foot, the price per square foot was like all.
Yeah,
And like I said, it's still over.
it can kind of depend too, like, in some of these older neighborhoods, they see like you see a lot more diversity in floor plan. Like, it's more frequent to see like a 2-2 or like a 3, like a 3-bathroom, 2-bedroom, or like a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Like, there's, in those older neighborhoods, like, it can be kind of hard to like run comps, you know what I mean? So it can really like depend what's going on over there, but I can see that that could be maybe like hard, and price per square footage, especially if there's very different floor plans for things to kind of transfer. Does that make sense to people? Kind of. I hope so.
So I didn't get it done, but if the appraisal had come back higher, that would not.
That would be a good thing. Like, if you paid $450 for a home and the appraisal came back at $485, you just made money. Because you could turn around and sell it.
But if it's lower,
Then, depending on, like, say we're under contract on something and it comes back lower, like we're under contract for $425, it comes back at $410, then the bank will only finance up to $410,000 of it. So then there'll be like a difference, and typically we come back to the negotiating table and have the seller meet us at the appraised value. At that point. Does anybody online have any questions? No. Okay, guys, I think that's a wrap. Thank you so much for like all of your time and patience. I know that this is like a lot.
Thank you. Yeah.
if you have potential conflict